So if you go back to 2016, Donald Trump violated every single establishment bias that these left progressive journalist elites had. And so they basically just attacked. But then you went into the election and there was a very clear data point that said whatever you thought was at best limited, and you missed the tone of the country. Because 50+% of the country held a very different view about this person. And instead of taking a step back and then the left media, the mainstream media, re-underwriting and learning and then saying, you know what, mea culpa, I got this wrong, they just doubled down. And they said, no, it still doesn't meet our priors. And so we're just going to ring fence this problem and we're going to just try to destroy this issue because, we want to control the narrative and by result, we want to control power. Now you look at SBF, it's the exact opposite. He went to the perfect elite private high school. Then he went to one of the most prestigious elite private universities.
MIT.
His parents teach governance of all things at one of the most elite liberal institutions in America.
Stanford.
They are in the establishment of the progressive left. And what happened was he took customer funds and all of this money. He made tens of millions of dollars of political donations. He wrapped himself in this blanket of a progressive left-leaning cause called effective altruism. And all of the mainstream media fell for it and embraced him, as well as some politicians, because it met everything that they themselves also bought into.
Yes.
And now you have this cataclysmic event, a multi-deca-billion-dollar fraud or bankruptcy, millions of customer accounts who are frozen, tens of millions to hundreds of millions to billions of dollars lost and stolen from them. And they refuse to re-underwrite this kid. And the reason is because in order to do so, it's like eating your own tail. And that's why they don't want to do it. And so this is why you have the media basically allowing him to do an apology tour. Now, this is his second time at manipulating them. The first time he was able to manipulate them by basically being one of them. And now he's allowing them and their desire to basically protect themselves so that he can create some kind of a defense for himself. And I just think the whole thing is gross because it misses the entire mood of the nation. This is an enormous financial fraud that was perpetrated on tens of millions of people. And there's no accountability because in order to do so, the media would effectively have to admit that they missed it and they got it wrong. And they refuse to do it. And I think that is the really big problem that nobody is really speaking out about is like, well, if these folks are meant to be the last stop to make sure that there's truth and honesty and transparency in society, and you can't count on them, and in fact, they're just going to reflect their own narrative, what is one supposed to do to learn the truth? It's the institutional rot of America. It reflects every single aspect of institutional rot that every non-elite talks about all the time, but elites, when they have those labels, will
he.
Yeah, look, I mean, just like
the he chat.
Look how convoluted and intertwined all these people are. Like Gensler's intertwined with the parents.
Yeah,
parents apparently bundled a bunch of money to Elizabeth Warren. He was dating the CEO of the business that he owned 90% in. There are all these other random shell companies that he owned 100% of, where they were lending back and forth hundreds of millions to billions of dollars.
Yeah.
To David's point, that is a sophisticated con that you have to architect. And the way that he was able to get away with it is that not a single reporter or regulator thought to dig in. And the reason, I think, is because he said all of the right things that wanted them to embrace him. Thing out loud, which is, look, by having gone to Crystal Springs High School, by having professors, my parents that went to Stanford, by having gone to MIT, I can pull this off. That's what he said, because he can go with those things, because I'm a champion of effective altruism, that I can justify any of these decisions, how amoral or immoral that they be, because I'm trying to help, my brother stand up a multi-million-dollar pandemic response business. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. And all of these regulators and all of these reporters said, okay, you get the hall pass. Now imagine if you replaced him with some random kid in some developing country or even from the United States who went to public high school, who went to some random state school. Do you think that they could have pulled any of this stuff off?
No. You need the patina of the privileged class.
I think this allows us to put a fine point on is the following. In society, we've confused a lot of people to think that the opposite of liberal is conservative or Republican. And I think that's the cycle that drives the mind virus inside the mainstream media. The problem is the opposite of liberal is illiberal. Okay? And what illiberal means is to be narrow-minded and unenlightened. It means to be puritanical. It means to be fundamentalist. And this is really what it allows us to see now. We have now had 6 years of data, case after case after case, where if you are woke, if you are a social justice warrior, if you have the right credentials that justify your upbringing, if you have institutional bona fides that come from your parents, you get to create the narrative and you get a hall pass. And everybody else basically is at the subject and the mercy of the mainstream media. And so if you don't kiss the ring and bow down to them, they will try to destroy you or run you out of town. But if you are one of them, they will give you a hall pass. And when it's time for them to change their mind in order to tell the truth, they won't do it. And so these types of grifts will continue, as Friedberg said, because there is no check and balance without a healthy, independent media. There is no way for all of us to actually know what's really going on. Guys, some person in the media could have asked the question and dug in deeper around the connections between Alameda and FTX for the last 24 months. At no point person have asked these questions and found ex-employees and said, are there any unseemly connections here between FTX and Alameda? There was no disgruntled employee. I mean, every company has disgruntled employee whistleblowers. But here, where there was billions of dollars being questioned, we were all standing around holding our hands while the CFTC and the SEC were fighting. That's not something that consumers can be expected to adjudicate. So yes, we should have legislation that clearly defines all of this, but there were enough parameters that created regulatory frameworks where a bunch of good actors did operate in them and are continuing to do so, like Coinbase. So I don't think this is a regulatory issue. I think that if you believe there are people who are supposed to forensically examine things and get to the bottom of things and ask hard questions, those people did none of that here. And what's even more worrisome is what they're showing is now with a massive amount of data that shows that you could ask hard questions, they don't care to because it makes them look bad. There's a great article. This one was a journalist that did his job properly. His name is David Z. Morris. He wrote an article in CoinDesk that summed up, for anybody that's interested, all of the actual fraud and all of the crimes that were committed in excruciating detail. And what's so sad about all these interviews and this press tour is if anybody would just read this article, you can construct the right questions to ask this guy just based on this one article. But the point I wanted to make is that one of the most interesting insights was these guys had lost an enormous amount of money already in calendar year 21. And so this is what's so crazy, Jason, about, you using language like rug pulling and nobody actually trying to be clear. Like you guys are giving this guy a hall pass.
I'm not giving him a hall pass.
Any industrious reporter could have found an employee who said, wait a minute, we just blew a $3 billion hole in our balance sheet in calendar year 20, and now we're sitting here at the end of 22. Last week, or this week, sorry. And I had this crazy experience where I was trying to understand what was going on in China. And so I started on CNN, and the whole thing was the propaganda machine around a democratic revolt, pushing for democracy and trying to depose Xi. Then I moved to Al Arabiya. So one channel up, I went from channel 10 to channel 11. And instead, what they were actually doing was interviewing people on the ground. And what they were talking about was literally how these PCR tests have become far too burdensome. And they just wanted it to end and more reasonable restrictions to get in and out of quarantine. Then I went from there to BBC. And in BBC, they had a China scholar who was talking about how for decades, actually, the Communist Party supports local level protests and demonstrations because they've realized that it is a part of their political system to make sure that people feel like they have a say. And I was like taking a step back and I'm like, if you listen to the US narrative and even Jason, like in our group chat, people fomenting for like revolution and this is Tiananmen 2.0. And I'm like, well, I'm reading two other channels that tell us a completely different set of things. And I just thought, man, people just really fit the data.
Such a good point.
To fit their bias.
Not that. This is big. What do you think? Are you in?
You know what? I'm in. Let's call everyone.
Hang on a minute. Ah, how dare you call this number? Okay, I'm in. Whatever.
Who was that?
That was my mom.
Oh. Hey, Donut, don't eat that.
Yo, what's up? Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm in.
I'm in. Hey, Arthur, I quit.
I'm in.
T-Bone, is it the downstairs toilet again?
Hello, Tom. Doggy coin?
Sue, Mark.
Are you in? I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in.
All right, this last one might be tough.
Nah, he loves you.
Probably just get another dentist. This guy. First, even if you wanted to come back, we wouldn't take you.
Yes, you would. Yeah, we would.
You're right, we would. What's up?
I'm getting into crypto with FTX. You in?
We're providing gives 360-degree access to the crypto markets with the ability to trade everything from alts to DeFi. I believe I'm in, but still hate you.
Understood.
Take care. Best of the family.
Is he?